Aviva Siegel, thank you so much for speaking with us here on WRAL. We know you are in Washington, D.C. as we speak. What has brought you back to the U.S. Capitol?
We came here. Keith is an American. He's 65 years old. He was born and raised in North Carolina. And we came here because we need Biden and everybody to help us get Keith out of Gaza.
We are coming up on a year since you and Keith and the other hostages were taken into captivity. The U.S. government has been working with numerous countries to try to get a ceasefire deal so that the hostages can be released. That hasn't happened yet. What do you want to hear from the American government?
I want to hear that the deal that's on the table will come true and that Keith will come home with all the hostages. There's 101 hostages left in Gaza, and they need to come back. So that's what I want to hear. But I do know that the Hamas is responsible, taking Keith and I with our pajamas from our house and kidnapping us in a very brutal way. And it's their responsibility to bring Keith back home.
I want to go back to that time, October 7th, and as well, your time in captivity and the day in November when you were told that you're being released, but your husband, Keith, is not. That must have been excruciating, Aviva.
Yes, to say goodbye to Keith, I didn't know if I'll ever see Keith again. And I didn't know if they're going to kill me or they're going to kill Keith. I just did not know. So that day was very, very emotional. I was scared, but I was scared all the time. I was threatened there that I would be killed all the time. And death was always above my head, thinking, when am I going to die? If I'm going to die first, if I'm going to see Keith dead.
Oh. Can you describe the conditions the hostages are in and were in when you were one of the hostages?
Yes, 6 hostages 2.5 weeks ago were shot dead by Hamas. And the conditions they were in were the worst conditions any human being should be in. They were very, very thin. Eden Yerushalmi weighed 79 pounds, and that's nothing. They had infections in their bodies, and they were brutally taken care of with bruises, with blood. They didn't have any food. They were just left there alone in a place that they couldn't even stand up straight because it was so narrow. And I was in those same conditions. I nearly died underneath the ground. One of the times they took us underneath the ground, it was 40 meters underneath the ground, and Keith and I were sure that we're going to die. All we did is lay down on a floor, on a filthy, dirty mattress, and tried to breathe. And Keith looked at me and he said that he feels that he does not have any oxygen. He was like, and I was like that too. And I just told Keith, just lie down and try and breathe. And everything in our mind just went that we're going to die soon.
It's hard to hear that, knowing that we're coming up on a year that over 100 hostages are still in those conditions. A year spent living like that, including Keith.
Yes. Keith's an American citizen, and Hirsch was American, and he was killed in such a brutal way. We've gotten so close to Hirsch's family, to Rachel and John, and it just broke my heart what they did to Hirsch. And I'm scared all the time that something similar will happen to Keith. The conditions there were so bad. We used to starve while they ate in front of us, and they didn't give us any water to drink. We weren't allowed to move our body. We weren't allowed to stand, and we had to lay down most of the time. And the only human right that we had, if we lie on our stomach or on our side, because everything was taken away, we had to say all the time that everything's okay in Arabic. We had to pick up Tamam and say, Tamam. Tamam is okay, while nothing was okay there. I was scared, I was threatened. And one of the worst things for me was to see Keith, to see Keith, the way they treated him in such a brutal way. He did not, he shouldn't have gone through something like that. He's 65 years old. He's the most gentle, sweet person in earth. And we behaved all the time. I used to ask myself, how come they behave to us like they do while we're behaving? But we were threatened all the time.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been digging his heels in. What will it take for him to relent and get the hostages home?
I'm not a politician, and I'm not dealing with politics. I'm just Keith's wife that wants Keith home. And I want him home now, and I want him home alive. And I'm just praying that Bibi will be strong enough to bring them home. But I do know that Hamas needs to take responsibility for everything they're doing to the hostages, because what they're doing is the worst thing ever.
Do you believe they're also responsible for what's happening to Palestinians? I mean, there's so much suffering going on. I want to understand what it's like for you to cope with being both a victim of and a witness to so much suffering.
Yes, I say that Keith and I are peacemakers, and we just want people to enjoy life. Everybody gets one chance in this world to live. And when I think about Palestinians, women in Gaza having babies in tents, it breaks my heart. And to see them and hear that they're suffering and that nobody in the world is even looking on what's happening there. And we can't let the evil win in this world.
So as we approach October 7th, Aviva, what's your focus? What do you do every day? I know you told your husband when you were leaving captivity that you would be brave for him and you needed him to be brave for you. I can't imagine what it's like for you to know we're coming up on a year.
Yes, my heart is broken up. I think about Keith all the time. I'm in Gaza with Keith also because of what I went through. And with the girls that have been tortured and touched and beaten up into pieces. I'm broken up into pieces. My family is, all we do is talk to anybody that will listen to us and beg. We're begging for help. We need help to bring Keith and the hostages back.
Last question for you, Aviva. Do you hope for a ceasefire deal?
I think that's the only way that the hostages will come home. It has to happen. I'm against wars. I'm against killing. And I think that if we look at history, history could be really, really mean and bad, and we need it to stop as soon as possible.
Aviva Siegel, I wish you and Keith all the very best. Thank you for taking the time.
I just want to tell everybody that Keith's mom is 97 years old, and he's waiting to come home and give her a hug, and she's waiting for him. And I pray every day that Keith will come home and he'll be able to come home to North Carolina to hug his mom. Thank you very much.